Hola, in this video we are going to be discussing our first artifact alias catalyst event for the Principal Dynamics series. We'll be touching on currency, which is going to be likely one of the very most difficult items of inquiry to deal with, the most heavily reinforced object of interest here, and just downright one of the most despicable villains we have in this story that it's going to take a long time to deal with. We're going to have to keep coming back to it, but I'm going to do what I can here to introduce the idea or the ideology regarding time mechanics, or now what's now principal dynamics, and how we look into these issues, how we can see things for what they really are. And this is going to be a difficult I should not say difficult. It's going to be a complex scenario that matters of deeper spotters who kind of, as the operative we spoke to in the last response clip would call it, a deep dive, as spotters have a tendency to deep dive into every item of inquiry. And this really harkens back to evolution in and of itself, the evolution of existence, namely biology. But the very evolution of existence, we have, a single unit of energy, or not sure what you would call it, it's a single unit of energy, and then we have this Big Bang idea where, energy divides into masses of energy that isolate and become their own material compounds and, their own designations. And then we have, single-celled organisms that evolve on the planet that go through mitosis, is it called? Cell division, where, cells divide and multiply to become more complex life forms, eventually resulting in what becomes us. And our, personal evolution continues on from there in the individual. But something that we don't usually regard, this complexity, this division complex, wherein things divide and multiply and become more complex forms, combinations, is what we regard as being evolution for the most part. What we don't usually regard or give any real respect to is the evolution of value itself, which, in the story of, to try and cut through and tell the story of currency itself, as throughout our evolution as a species, as personalities and familialities become more intricately designate, the concepts of property and of appropriation come into play. Whereas people likely early on in our development would just be giving and sharing. They would and before I continue with this, we are capable of coming to understand this process from a cosmological perspective, in observing the phases of personality or personal value system development in infancy. And you can look at a baby. Anybody who's raised a child, anybody who's even studied into that, has a pretty good idea of how personal evolution works, how people develop, and how we indeed would have likely have developed as a species, as a community. And as communities develop, again, as personalities and familialities develop, and people begin to isolate into divided societal structures, these concepts of property and appropriation come into play. Whereas, early on in our development as a people, it's very likely that we'd have shared and just we'd have regarded each other as parts of each other. And so if somebody was lacking in something that we had to give, we would give it to them. We would not feel any need to charge them for it. If we had enough of it to give, we would give it. As simple as that. And a lot of people still behave this way, of course, but for the most part, the norm has become demanding reward or compensation. And the reason for this is because we have currency now kind of representing value itself. It's making an attempt at replacing value itself, and this is a very deep concept here. If any spotters are watching, you should see that how deep this actually goes. You should know how deep this actually goes already. In the very factor that indeed money could be regarded as the root of all evil, but of course that's a plant, that's a spot that's put into play for certain reasons that we'll get to, but it can be regarded as the root of all things because indeed money is replacing an attempt by society at replacing God itself. And that might seem a little off the deep end for some people, but we're going to tell exactly what that means. We know that God is representative of the life in all of us, ultimately life itself. God equals life. There's no difference between that. And so far as we know, we understand this. Some people have this concept of God as being a certain type of person, or, God is not human. God is a concept. God is an idea, and it's a living presence in the world that is basically the consciousness behind all of us. Most easily said, it is the consciousness that becomes a personality. And it is indeed living as a free energy in the world that will communicate with you, and it communicates through these values. And the values involved in currency is that we can say that God is love, that God is life and God is love, and we have some understanding of what love is supposed to be. But what love actually is investment, concern, consideration. Love is interest. And we as I said, we would have been sharing with our commodities what we required earlier on in our evolution as a people, but as we began to take notice of requirements for each other, obviously regarding survival first and foremost, or subsistence at least, but eventually moving into luxury and what people desire, we would notice envy and jealousy begin to develop, and envy and jealousy pulls interest, it pulls attention. Attention is the guiding force behind the energy we have as conscious entities. Our consciousness, it's attention. What we pay attention to, what we take interest in, what we consider. And so envy, jealousy, the two of them, those are two sides of the same coin. But envy's not really a bad thing. Jealousy could be considered a very bad thing, but they're two sides of the same coin. And it equates to power because it drags interest, it drags attention, it drags love. And love becomes worship, becomes greed, which greed divides us further, divides our personalities. This is the evolution of our persona. It divides us into haves and have-nots, those who, have an abundance and those who require. And in creating currency, what we've essentially done is attempted to, and keep in mind that currency in and of itself, the very concept of currency, is a debt-based interest. It is a faith-based interest. And when you regard currency, what you are looking at is the concept of something being owed, the concept of credit earned, the concept of something that is of value backing it, where in fact there actually is nothing of value backing currency. There never was. We use gold as the common exchange unit where it comes to that. And when we're speaking to this particular outlet of currency, we're talking, various currencies are going to have similar value systems. But what we're speaking to here is the common, modern, standard USD version of currency, because that particular variation regards our specific society here in America, which is really the problem area for the most part, one of the major problem areas that we have happening. And not to speak down on America, in fact, I could be regarded as somewhat of a patriot. I love my country, I love my people, but I love my planet. I'm a patriot of Earth, and I recognize that America, as fantastic a place as it is, it's also the source of many, it's the origin point for many problems, extremely problematic areas of concern that we have, especially as the initiative worldwide. So, I'm going to give like a brief example of it. I was thinking about this earlier regarding our work with the kratom and the Mitradina speciosa and the natural remedies. Um, we have this concern here where the DEA wants to pass a ban to get rid of eliminate this natural remedy because it's particularly effective. That's why, and they have many excuses as to why. They come up with ideas saying that, it's in some way dangerous or addictive, which it is actually neither. Nobody's ever died from kratom. People have overdosed on other drugs whilst taking kratom, and that's the backup they use for their case studies, so to speak, saying that people who have used kratom had died from other substances, but it's not. That's a backing they have for trying to ban it. That's really the only backing they have. But what they're really trying to do is get rid of this because it's threatening their income with pharmaceutical corporations and narcotic addiction in general. And people all over the place are addicted to narcotics because pharmaceutical corps are pushing them, and this is what funds America. This is a major funding point for America. Its value regarding this particular area of interest is economics. It's their ability to maintain this level of power, this false level of power, this charade of value, where in fact there's no value present in that. There is indeed value present in the narcotics themselves because they're addictive, and that addiction creates a pull of attention, interest, consideration, which creates that power, that fuel for driving and pulling love. And that's what it's all going to come back to ultimately, is our regards, because we know that love is what we're seeking. We know that love is what we want. Love is what really matters. That's the real value. One second. Note that what's presciently imperative in this whole endeavor, the principle dynamics and all of it, is that throughout our evolution as biological entities and as personal emotional entities, it's the relationship between matter and value that creates physics itself, and indeed is the most prevalent premise or priority of the overall investigation into this topic as spotters. And really, this is the basis behind time mechanics, is this whole understanding, which is now principle dynamics. But as I was saying with the kratom thing, is that we now have this issue of concern where we have to decide, and then the DEA and the people working on this are deciding between two different concern areas regarding our value systems, which is our economics, our ability to create this funding, which is ultimately a false value backing up the concept of us dragging love, interest, attention, and our actual health concerns. We're discerning between what's more important, money or our actual health, because this is a natural remedy that is healthy for you. It's good for you. It promotes wellness. It assists with just about any illness. It's very, very effective in helping people on an individual level, and it's relatively cheap too, and it's an all-around great fucking resource. But they want to eliminate it because it's taking money away from their narcotic distribution. So now we have regards as to whether we want to assist our health, our overall health as a community, or continue to persist in this detriment to our health by permeating narcotic abuse and addiction for the sake of creating economic, feedback, which, of course, our people largely, even you guys, some of you that are not informed on this issue, are going to be leaning towards choosing economics over health, because It's like not only most people don't know any better, and it's reinforced, it's pushed on us to think this way, to feel this way, to regard money as being more important than ourselves, really. Um, I'm going to go ahead and cut this here because I really want people to watch this. We're going to dive deep into the value system regarding standard USD currency in the next clip. Thank you for your time. Kila Salai. Terve Namaste.